Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Better Basics Podcast, the realest fitness podcast on the planet. I am Matt Stone, and as always, I have with me my best friend and co-host, Dylan Waldhuter. Dylan, last week you talked about how winter was kicking your ass a little bit. If you thought that was bad, welcome to this week, buddy.
It's so bad, dude. It's so bad you had to borrow Archer's headphones to cover your
Yeah.
cold ears.
Yeah, for if you're watching on the YouTube or just Spotify video, you'll notice that I have on my son's funny blue headphones because last week my headphones broke, and now we're here. But you know what? The sound quality in these things are way better than my old headphones, so I like it.
Yeah, it's a trend in the right direction. I think we've got to get our audio visual really ramped up here in the next
Mm-hmm.
few months. This is episode 51. So next week is 52. That's a year straight of episodes. And I
Mm-hmm.
think maybe with 53 we start to kind of roll out some of the improvements we've been considering to the podcast.
Finally show the people what we've been talking about behind the
Yes.
scenes. I think that's a good idea. Uh, we have got an awesome episode for the people today. We're going to get into a subject that, man, it has been just absolutely shrouded in controversy. Like one of like the four horsemen of the apocalypse when it comes to health and fitness in the last few years. We're going to talk about seed oils and give the people an understanding of when you hear the term seed oils, what it means, some of the science behind it, and then like the important takeaways that people need to be concerned with on this stuff. It's going to be a very rational conversation. Um, Paul Saladino has not returned our interview request to show up to defend himself and the anti-seed oil community. But we're going to get into it, get into that later. Right now, let's start with the hot topic. This one is all about a study done showing something that, something that we kind of believed to be true, but now it's coming a little bit more conclusive. It's all about high protein diets and healthy aging.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to see a study like this come out, kind of confirming or providing additional evidence for the benefits of protein. On this podcast, we've talked a lot about their benefit for building muscle, for body recomposition, for energy balance and controlling calories. But this one's looking at a number of different nurses over time and how it impacted how they aged in the long run. So protein's interesting because it actually has kind of a mixed reputation when it comes to its health effects. Um, we know it to be the most essential macronutrient there is. I actually learned as I was reviewing this study that it derives from a Greek word and literally means of first importance. So protein, I think we've communicated on here before. We strongly believe is the most important macronutrient for you to be considering and consuming enough of good quality. On the other hand, there's these people out there that'll instill fear about anabolism, mTOR, you may have heard of, and that it could have some impact on longevity. We're not going to get into that too much today, but we will kind of highlight what the hard data in real humans is saying. So this study looked at the food intakes and health outcomes for like 50,000 nurses from the 1980s through 2016. So a lot of people. And they defined healthy aging as being free from 11 major chronic diseases, having good mental health, and not having any impairments in either cognitive or physical function. And what the study found was protein intake was significantly associated with higher odds of healthy aging, and that the sources of protein that showed the greatest benefit were dairy, which oftentimes can be confusing with regards to whether or not it's healthy, and plant protein, but animal protein also showed favorability. So just kind of a cool study, further reinforcing the importance of protein beyond just muscle building more to do with its relationship to our overall health.
Yeah, I think the interesting part for me was that part that you just went over, how the greatest health benefits were from dairy and plant protein, which, I mean, I think dairy specifically gets like such a bad rap as far as health is concerned, and is one of those things that is often like one of the first things that people recommend to go if you're having health issues, limit your dairy intake. And it's just interesting that in this case, it's actually showing the opposite. Now, obviously, that's going to be for people that can tolerate it. If you're if you're intolerant to regular dairy, you probably aren't going to see those health benefits.
You
And then
need
the
to
plant,
toughen up if you're
yeah, suck it up, buddy. Or and then I think the plant protein one is interesting, but it makes sense to me because if you are eating a lot of plant protein, odds are, and you're really like hyper aware of it, odds are you've got a pretty diverse diet of a lot of different plants, because in order to get a sufficient amount of protein in your diet from mainly plant sources with that complete amino acid profile, you can't just be eating one thing. You can't just have rice all day long.
Yeah, the other co-benefit of plant protein is the fiber. You're
Mm-hmm.
not going to get with animal protein, so that's kind of interesting. And then I think the one potential downside of too much animal protein is that a lot of sources of animal protein will be relatively high in saturated fat,
Mm-hmm.
which is actually a topic we're going to dive into more today. So if you are consuming significant amounts of animal protein, that could be something to be a little bit cautious of. Maybe not always consuming the 80/20 ground beef, looking to more 93/7 sources. Maybe mixing in some leaner cuts of meat versus always. Now that being said, there's certainly benefit to, especially with high quality meats, the fats that come with it. But exclusively consuming these higher fat cuts of meat could come with some downsides.
Yeah, but I think like the same thing with the plants is the variety. Like if all you eat
True.
is ground beef, then there's going to be some issues with that. And when if you only eat chicken breast, I mean, I think the issue with that is that you're just a psychopath that doesn't care about
Yeah,
flavor.
right. It's gross.
Um, but like if you are going to be, if meat or animal based sources are going to be your primary way of getting protein, which makes sense for a lot of people, it is. You just want to make sure that you're getting a variety. Those organ meats, those kind of more obscure cuts. Mixing, the differences between beef and chicken and all the the different varieties. So treating it similarly to somebody would with the way that they would approach eating a diversity of vegetables.
You bet. Yeah, what the study doesn't do is get too much into like mechanisms for why this is occurring, but I think we can make some hypotheses around one, we know protein just provides essential bodily functions. But I think the other interesting component of this is what we've talked about before, which is protein's role in a more favorable body recomposition. So we know that higher levels of muscle mass and lower levels of fat are consistently related to better health outcomes. And we've talked about before that consuming protein will help you to build that muscle. It's highly satiating, therefore will prevent you from eating other things that may be higher in calories, contributing to weight gain. So pretty cool to think about, why this is occurring, but I think that could be a couple of the reasons.
Yeah, I mean, protein is going to just set you up for a better diet. By
Yeah.
having adequate protein, it's going to make sure you're full. It's going to make sure that your muscles can repair themselves. You can build new muscle, which we know how important it is for when you get older. Okay, that is our hot topic for the Worth It this weekend, Dylan. I have something so simple and so profound, but yet so profound for me. This is just something I've been very grateful for over the last couple of weeks. and it's my lacrosse ball.
Oh,
The lacrosse ball is one of the few things that anytime a client comes in, a lot of times I'll just give them one. We just have a bunch at the gym, and I'll just give them to people or tell them like this is the first place that you got to start when you're coming in with like just immobility and tightness. For people that don't know about the beauties of the lacrosse ball, like really you just use it like a really like a foam roller. It is used in a very similar way with the same general concept, as the foam roller, just kind of that pressure point. Some people would call it myofascial release. There's a lot of different things that people speculate that go on when you use these mobility tools. But one thing that is unquestioned is the ability for you to just use one of these tools like a lacrosse ball on a tight muscle and its ability to loosen up that muscle pretty quickly. Now, is it going to create a forever change? No, not necessarily. But if you suffer from chronic tightness or just like general aches and pains, lacrosse ball for the amount of money that it costs. I mean, you can get like 2 for $5 at Dick's Sporting Goods. There really is nothing in my mobility toolbox that has the same bang for its buck that my lacrosse ball does.
it's so good for getting muscles that are otherwise difficult to get with a tool like a foam roller. So
Mm-hmm.
I especially love a lacrosse ball for kind of two key areas. One is like the chest, the pecs,
Oh yeah.
putting it up against a wall and really working those out is super effective. The other is like if you've been in the gym strength training long enough, you're likely at some point to tweak at least a little bit your QL muscle or your quadratus lumborum, especially with as tight as our hips are. It's the deepest muscle in the back and kind of originates from the iliac crest sort of into your hip. And it's like the lower back on either side and laying on a lacrosse ball. Actually, a gym I worked out at for quite a while had like a double lacrosse ball. It looked like butt cheeks.
Like the
Um,
peanut.
the peanut,
Yeah.
the peanut man, that thing was glorious for the lower
Mm-hmm.
back.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
peanut's great. Because you can use it. It can go like you can hit both sides of the spine with it.
hmm
But that one's also super awesome. You can just like at home for my peanut, I just taped 2 lacrosse balls together. Just got a roll of athletic
yeah,
tape and 2 lacrosse balls, and it works essentially the same. The other one that is really nice for that QL area, if you've never tried this, is a game changer, is putting that lacrosse ball up on a yoga block to give it just like a little bit more elevation. You can
Mm,
really get deep into those, like, yeah, that QL, psoas
mhm.
type area in the back. It's really, really good. But yeah, I mean, for like $2, it's an absolute game changer. And like the
Yeah,
best part is, mine's just sitting in the corner of the room over there. When I'm doing my floor sitting at the end of the day, watching TV, I'm just going to have that lacrosse ball out. And, sometimes maybe like I'll do something a bit more specific, but if I have like, a spot that's bothering me, but more often than not, it's just, chasing sensation, just trying to like hit some different spots and just like playing around with it. I feel like it's just been such a game changer for my mobility. I love it.
yeah, worth it, man. So worth
Oh,
it.
worth it. Okay.
Wait, 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 wait. While we're on the worth it subject,
All right.
I need to share some bad news with you and
Oh,
with the
oh,
audience.
is this, don't break my heart here. I haven't even had them yet.
Yeah, so
Oh
I'm coming to see you
no.
tomorrow. I was gonna swing through the Taco Bell and pick up some chicken nuggets for you to try, and I learned this evening that the Taco Bell chicken nuggets have been discontinued.
because the U.S. government just was sick of the gains, that the implications of
People are getting too strong, man.
just having a swole country.
Yeah.
They
I don't.
were just sick of the idea of just having people walking around with access to that kind of macronutrient content at Taco Bell.
It was the first. Yeah, it probably. Yeah, I think it was one of Trump's executive orders yesterday.
He was
With
like, the country's getting too
no more,
strong,
no
too strong
more.
of a country. Wait, why?
As I understand it, it was always a limited run, and when they do these limited run things, they like essentially have an inventory, and when the inventory is gone, it's done. So I don't know if we'll see him come back. There was certainly a cult following around him. I'm sure there'll be some pushback. But that scarcity creates further demand. I'm sure it's good for their brand overall.
Well, yeah. What kind of like crazy publicity they just got on? I mean, yeah, you do have to, yeah, think that the Better Basics bump that they got
Yeah,
after last week's episode
it ran
dropped,
out quick.
probably ran out quick. Damn, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
All right, well, R.I.P. Taco Bell chicken nuggets. You were fun. Well, you lasted. Man. All right, on to the main course. Uh, Again, we're talking about seed oils, and I love the title. What the fuck is actually up with seed oils? So I guess like the big things that we want to cover today, quick science and, studies 101. So we're going to understand the mechanisms of what seed oils are doing. We're going to look at the different relationships, long-term trends. We're going to just keep this. I mean, we're going to get into the weeds a little bit here, but the fact of the matter is that this is a really nuanced and subject that's caused a lot of animosity in the health and wellness community over the last few years. And so what we're going to just try and do is give it to you as straight as possible, all sides of the coin, so that by the end of this episode, you can just feel a little better about the decisions that you're making surrounding seed oils.
Yeah, the issue here with this topic is that it's super, super hot and prevalent in the health and wellness space. And so as a result, every single health and wellness person, influencer, etc., has to have an opinion on it. And the opinions that get the most attention are the ones that are the most polarizing.
Or should you say inflammatory?
The most inflammatory on brand. And so, as usual, the way we're going to talk about this isn't in the best interest of the Better Basics business. Because if we wanted this to go viral and get the most ears, we would have to die on a hill. The other issue in all of this is there are a lot of really, really smart people that are incredibly opinionated on one side or the other of this, but they're doing that to either support their brand, or to gain additional attention. And so what they like to do, what they're really good at doing, is manipulating science and studies to support a specific viewpoint.
Yeah, which is just shitty.
It is.
Yeah, and that I think is one of the most challenging things about a conversation like this is you have people that have the letters next to their names. They've got the following. They have, some of them even have, like the physique to back it up too. All of these things, but they're either, like you said, they're either knowingly, misinterpreting data for, their benefit, or they're just looking at the coin from one side, and really just doing what they have to do to go viral and to keep the views up. So like it's a tough subject because like you said, you could the easiest thing to do here is to say one way or the other, they're good or they're bad, and here's why. And then you just wait for the praise from your side of the community and hate from the other side of the community. And that discourse just makes it's not even discourse.
It's all good for business.
It's all good for business. And so, yeah, like it just sucks.
It really does. Yeah. And not spoiler alert. The truth is we don't actually really know how good or how bad they are for us. But what we're going to do is we're going to give you the information, the nuanced information with regards to what we do know about seed oils so that you can better understand how to consider them as a component of your own life or your own diet. What I'll also say, and that I believe to be more important than any of this, is while we aren't totally sure with regards to seed oil's impact on human health, what we do know is that not getting enough sleep is bad for you. Eating too many calories is bad for you. Not working out or getting physical activity is bad for you. There are so many bigger rocks than seed oils. So if you're not sleeping and you're not moving and you're not eating your fruits and vegetables, like this doesn't matter at the end of the day.
Right. Exactly. Like, and that is that is a really important argument for people to understand is we are majoring. This is another one of those opportunities for people major in the minors. And that's not to say that, there aren't some important things that everybody should know about seed oils and their implications with their health. But, if you are struggling, if you're struggling to get your 8 hours, if you're struggling to get your exercise in, if you have no hold over your nutrition, then this isn't, this stuff is going to matter so little in the long run. So I guess like the best place to start is when we say seed oils, what do we mean? What are seed oils?
Yeah, so seed oils are vegetable oils. They're extracted from the seeds of various plants. So some common ones you've probably seen are soybean oil. Canola oil is probably the most prevalent. Canola oil is also called rapeseed oil. It comes from the rapeseed plant. Sunflower oil, corn oil, safflower oil, cottonseed oil, grape oil. All of these fall into the bucket of the broader seed oil category. And they're really commonly used in cooking and frying. And they're very prevalent in processed and packaged foods like snacks, baked goods, margarine. You'll find them quite often in like salad dressings you can find in the grocery store, different sauces, your barbecue sauces, your ketchups. And so I think one of the key points for those that are opposed to seed oils is that they're typically extracted through some mechanical pressing or chemical method. After that, they typically will go through some further refining processes that may include bleaching, deodorizing, adding preservatives, things to improve the taste, the shelf life, and the appearance of the oil. So
don't go Googling what the process of making these seed oils look like, or do like that's fine, but understand it's not a pretty process. It's
but don't go look at how your ground beef is processed either.
Well, exactly. Like, if you don't want to right. It's just like that's where the expression like how the sausage is made, it's where it comes from. I heard I was watching, I think it was a Saladino video in preparation for this, and he said, have you seen the factories that these seed oils are made in? They look like oil refineries. And it's like, well, they literally are oil refineries, buddy. Like that's what they're doing. Oil. They're there to refine oils. Like I get it. I get it. And and then you have the other arguments like which one was it? Like canola oil was invented by Procter and Gamble as like a mechanical, or well,
Lubricant.
for mechanical lubricants, and they used them for like yeah, right, early on, and then we're looking for another use for them, so they figured out a way to refine it even further and make it edible,
Yeah.
and these things are, two things can be true at the same time. Like it can be gross and, but also that doesn't inherently make it dangerous.
Right. Totally true. Yeah, and so they're good for cooking. They're good for frying. They're
Hmm.
good for dressing. But they really don't contain much in the way of nutrients. They're not very rich in vitamins or minerals unless they're fortified in some way. The nutritional profile of seed oils specifically, they're high in polyunsaturated fats. So you might hear somebody talk about PUFAs. And PUFAs are particularly high in omega 6 fatty acids. Some of these will also contain small amounts of monounsaturated fats and omega 3 fatty acids. But one of the debates we're going to get into with regards to whether or not these are good or bad for you has to do with the ratio of omega 6s to omega 3s in your diet and in your body. And both are essential and incredibly important, but there is some mechanistic evidence to suggest that too much omega 6 relative to the amount of omega 3 in your body can lead to inflammation that can have an impact on chronic disease.
Yeah, and this is a really hot button issue now because of the proportions, and this is one of those things that the kind of spawned from like that keto or like carnivore corner where they were looking at inflammation, and the rise of chronic inflammation in today's population. And one of the things that they noticed was also this rise in the omega 6 to omega 3 ratio in people's diets, where I think I've seen it, like some people are make the claim that it should be like 1 to 1, but really in today's modern like American diet, it's like 10 to 1 or higher,
Mhm.
in favor of the omega 6 acids to the omega 3s.
Yeah. So it kind of gets into where this debate really all begins. So there's some debate around, different studies that suggest different impacts on cardiovascular health, on this omega 6 to omega 3 ratios, role in inflammation, and really just general overall metabolic health. It's the ratio that's important. You're right. Omega 6 on its own, omega 6 fatty acids are really important for growth, for your immune system, for healthy skin. Omega 3s are going to have pretty significant anti inflammatory properties, support your brain health, your heart health, and your immune function as well. So it's really coming down to that ratio. And I want to get into a little bit with regards to sort of studies and how studies are interpreted and then applied to causation when people are making arguments about these different things. So we're going to
Yeah,
get
that's really
into
important.
like what does the seed oils bad camp say? What does the seed oils good or okay camp say? But before we do that, I don't want to get too into the weeds here, but I want to highlight a couple of things. So there are studies that are conducted in a lab, either in a petri dish or in an animal, um, and those are pretty low quality studies. Those studies should really be used to understand mechanisms. So, like, using omega 6 as an example, we can say we have laboratory studies that examine how omega 6 fatty acids influence inflammation pathways. That's what we know to be true. The problem is that that helps us to understand the mechanism. It doesn't help us to understand for certain causatively what that means when it's occurring in a human being's body. And the challenge is that a lot of times these zealots on either side of the argument will take these lower quality studies that should really be used to help us conduct further research,
Right.
and they'll draw the arrow straight to causation and say, because we have evidence that omega-6 fatty acids influence inflammation pathways, it's harming human health.
Yeah.
And that's too big of a leap. So that's one thing I wanted to kind of highlight. The other thing we get a lot of is like observational studies, which aren't all that quality as well for determining causation. They oftentimes will tell us a lot about correlation, and we've gotten into this before. And correlation is great to understand, but what correlation should be doing is helping us to generate further hypotheses to test for causation. And again, the problem is people love to take correlation and apply it to causation and say, because these two things correlate, it's having a negative impact on human health.
Were you the one that was telling me about like the Rob Schneider correlation?
No.
Here you keep talking. I'm gonna find it. Yeah. Hold on. Just stall for just a minute here.
The correlation example I like to use is, or I've heard people reference is like ice cream sales and shark attacks are like almost
right.
perfectly correlative. Does that mean that eating ice cream is causing shark attacks? Absolutely not. But we like to do this in human health as well, where we pick out two things that are correlated to each other and then suggest that that means it's causing. And there can be all of these other confounding variables. The confounding variable in ice cream sales and shark attacks is it's warmer out. So more people are eating ice cream and more people are going to the ocean to swim. So it's really just incredibly important that we understand the quality of these studies and what they should be telling us, so that when you see these people pushing these opinions based on these different studies, we can assess whether or not the evidence they're relying on is quality enough to be making as bold of claims as they are. What we really want to look to get as close to causation as we can with regards to human health are randomized human control trials. These are studies where they'll randomly assign participants to an intervention group. So, for example, they could have one group that has a diet with seed oils and then another group that's a control group where they're eating a diet without seed oils. And they'll compare some outcomes. And this is really the gold standard for establishing causation. It reduces bias with randomization and is occurring, the outcomes occurring in human beings, so that we can really understand what it means to their impacts on human health. So there's some studies as it relates to seed oils. One, for example, looking at replacing saturated fats with seed oils and using that to evaluate effects on cholesterol and heart disease. And we'll talk a little bit about what those studies show, but those are higher quality studies than these observational or animal or mechanistic studies that are useful but should not be leveraged to make causal conclusions. Did I stall long enough?
I couldn't find it, man. You did a great job, and I really appreciated everything that you said. It's going to be very useful for people in the rest of the podcast. Well, this was just going to be fun, but I couldn't find it. It's something like Rob Schneider movie releases and tsunamis. It's like something like really stupid. I'll make a note. I'll see if I can find it for the next podcast, because it is a fun, just like one of those fun correlation, like random ass correlation is not causation facts. But more importantly today, you've done a really nice job outlining the framework, and that is really important because it's one of those things that when we think about these cherry pickers and opportunistic influencers, they really do a good job of conflating data and making mountains out of molehills. One thing that I think is really important for people to realize is when you're looking at interpretations of studies. If the most concrete piece of evidence that a side has is a study that was done in mice or rats, that study needs more. Like, there needs to be more done in order for there to be any sort of conclusive evidence to be pulled from that. Because, like you said, those types of laboratory studies are very good at figuring out how specific mechanisms might work. And they can be a good place to get the ball rolling. But if the big groundbreaking study is something that is the effect of something in mice, like last I checked, none of our listeners are mice, so they don't need to worry about it too much.
Yeah, that's spot on. So I think we should spend a little time just briefly covering like the points of view of each of these two kind of camps, and then conclude by offering kind of a nuanced conclusion takeaway to the most important components of these arguments and which ones we should be considering when we're thinking about seed oils and how we consume them.
Yeah, I think we can do that. All right, where do we want to start?
So let's start with the seed oils bad camp, because we've already kind of hit on the omega-6 issue. And I think the primary argument here is that high omega-6 content and some potential for oxidation during cooking or processing may contribute to inflammation and chronic health issues. And again, we do have mechanistic studies to show this. We have some lab studies that show that increased omega-6 in our diet does lead to some inflammation. But we don't have any good randomized human control trials to provide us any kind of causal evidence there. So it's something to be maybe interested in. It's something that perhaps we should look to study further through some randomized human control trials. But just note that these claims that people are making about this, there really isn't strong human data yet to support it. We do know, as you noted, that modern diets are oftentimes disproportionately high in omega-6 fatty acids relative to omega-3s, like 10 to 1 or higher. And again, this may contribute to inflammation and chronic disease like heart disease, obesity, diabetes. But we don't really have strong human evidence to suggest that's the case just yet. The refining process itself, we talked a little bit about, that can introduce some trans fats, and trans fats we do know are bad. And it does strip out a lot of the beneficial nutrients, so therefore they're not super nutrient beneficial. And these are polyunsaturated fatty acids. They're higher in these omega-6s, and that makes them the way that these bonds are structured in these polyunsaturated fatty acids means that they're more prone to oxidation during high heat cooking. And that can, because they oxidize and these bonds break down, they can produce harmful byproducts like aldehydes that may promote some oxidative stress. And I do think that point is an interesting one, which I think we'll dive into a little bit later.
Yeah, definitely. And so that's, those are the general, seed oil bad arguments. Now looking at the other side of things, the people that say that not only are seed oils not necessarily bad, but some people will even argue, and there's some research to suggest that in certain amounts they're even they can be better for you than some of the alternatives. I think one of the big claims is that seed oils are heart healthy because of their polyunsaturated fat content, which can help lower that LDL, LDL cholesterol, that bad cholesterol. And one of the big things with these seed oils is stating that they're better than their alternatives, which notably are like saturated fats, which when we think about saturated fats, the main camp is the, animal fats world. And there's a lot of studies out there that show that these saturated fats are actually significantly worse for our health when it comes to the increase of that LDL cholesterol. And then, there's some other just like general, like heart health stuff that goes along with that as well. And then, there are studies that look at those polyunsaturated fatty acids versus saturated fats. And what we actually found when looking at some of those studies was that there was actually a neutral or net positive effect when it came to inflammatory markers, glucose regulation, and liver fats. So in some of these studies, you're actually seeing the opposite of that, the anti-seed oil camps. And, but I think it's one of those things where two things can be true at once. And in this case, it's like there's a shitload of things that can be true at once. Seed oils are not terrible for you in moderation. There are some studies that even show that they might be beneficial. And just because you like to, quote unquote, eat natural, because this is, where we see a lot of this, anti-seed oil rhetoric comes from the, natural camps. But, just because something has been processed doesn't naturally make it worse for you. And when we think about some of these, longevity health markers, looking at that LDL cholesterol, they can have a really profound impact and actually be beneficial for you. Whereas, some of these animal fats can be not as healthy as some people are willing to claim.
Yeah, well said. I think on the seed oils bad camp side of things, what we can say is higher levels of omega 6 in the diet could lead to inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
On the seed oils not so bad or even good side of things, we can say that seed oils as an alternative to other sources of fat have a positive benefit on our overall health markers. So like there's multiple, to your point, multiple things that are true here. The quality of the science is better on the seed oils not bad camp side of things. These are the studies you're referencing about replacing saturated fats with PUFAs are randomized control trials.
Right.
So for anybody to say that seed oils are absolutely definitely dangerous when we have quality science to suggest that they're either neutral or even positive in some cases is just wrong. I think it's also wrong for anybody that thinks seed oils are good to say that they're unequivocally good, because we do have, while it's lower quality data, we do have some data to suggest that we should be cautious of the omega-6 content in our diet, because mechanistically it could be leading to inflammation that could cause some problems. And so both of these things can exist in tandem and be true at the same time. And so I think there's some takeaways in all this that I think you and I feel pretty strongly about.
Yeah, and here's the biggest one for me. This is actually, I'm glad that you brought this up as a potential topic, because it's something that I have had a huge, change of heart. Not change of heart, but I've definitely changed my opinion on it over the last decade, where, for the longest time, I was very much a part of that camp. Seed oil's bad. Like, you can't eat them. They're causing inflammation. They're literally killing us. Before we started this podcast, I was just looking for, random, different interviews and videos that I could find. And I came across an old Paul Saladino, who, for those of you that don't know, I've mentioned him a couple times already. He was a formerly known carnivore MD who has since had to walk back that title because he got some long-term like blood work done, and basically his doctors were like, dude, like you
You need to
can't
eat
just
some vegetables, dude.
you cannot even vegetables, but fruits at least, for
Yeah,
God's sake, like,
yeah.
please, you need fiber. It's really important. He has an episode titled linoleic acid, which is one of the big, portions of omega 6. When we think of omega 6 acids, linoleic acid is what we're talking about. Linoleic acid makes you fat and dead faster is the title of the podcast.
Oh my God, dude!
So
So many people probably clicked on that.
it's crazy, but I guess like the thing that is that like we need to remember here is, yes, like looking at these actually like well done studies. If you look at these well done studies, it seems to show that on the whole, these seed oils aren't as bad for you as these internet zealots claim. However, if you are going to if you're going to make some guidelines for your health and you decide that you're going to limit the amount of seed oils that you're going to put in your body, I guarantee you're going to be healthier because of that decision. But it's not, this is the important thing to remember though, is it's probably not because of how few seed oils you are putting in your body. It's because of the types of foods that generally are cooked in seed oils and the dietary decisions that you are going to have to make when you decide to limit them. So I think it's just like it's super important. Like, will you live a healthier life if you decide to be more mindful of the amount of seed oils that you are consuming on a daily basis? Absolutely. Does that mean that it's the seed oils that are making you unhealthy? No.
Yeah, uh, uh, it's so tough when you have these people cherry picking science and data.
Hmm.
Like we have to determine what our threshold of evidence for us to feel strongly about something is, and then stay consistent with that in all of our viewpoints. And the
Right.
challenge here is like there is no randomized control trial data to suggest that seed oils increase cardiovascular disease or inflammatory markers. There are some lower quality studies that suggest that they may have an impact on our inflammatory markers. So, what these people should be saying, if they feel strongly about this, is there are some low quality studies to suggest that these could pose some risks. And then when you're making a decision as it relates to your own health, you have to think about if I'm going to no longer eat seed oils, for example, what are my alternatives? And the reality here is there's a lot of really good alternatives
Hmm.
that are pretty simple to substitute. So if you're a little bit concerned about the risks that are represented in some of these lower quality studies, the barrier to change is not difficult. Just eat more olive oil, avocado oil. These things these things have more minerals and nutrients and polyphenols in them that are good for you versus seed oils. So it's just the way that they represent the information that's often so challenging. Like you mentioned with Paul Saladino, MD, no longer carnivore MD. It's just fear mongering. It's nonsense. Like we have quality studies to suggest that seed oils, when replacing saturated fats, and these guys love to just slab the butter on frickin' everything. And
Yeah.
butter is delicious. I love butter. But too much butter is not good for you. It is super high in saturated fat. And we do have randomized human control trials showing that saturated fat increase does have a causative impact on cholesterol, which is a risk factor for cardiovascular disease. So there's
Yeah.
so much nuance in this. I think where I land on this is I don't keep it in my house, seed oils.
Right. Me neither.
I cook with olive oil or avocado oil. If I want the treat, I'll go for the butter. Butter is good for you in moderation. Too much of it's bad, but it has vitamins and nutrients and minerals in it as well. And if if I'm exposed to it outside of my home, I don't concern myself with it.
Exactly. But like Dylan, we haven't even addressed the biggest leg to stand on that the anti seed oil crowd has, and the one that they don't like, that they're not talking about. The biggest issue with these seed oils nowadays is that added oils have become one of the biggest sources of increased energy in the American diet. And what
Yeah.
I mean by energy is calories. Calories
Hmm.
equal energy. When we are looking at the modern American diet, and one of the biggest changes over the last the decades that have preceded us is we are consuming more oils than we have ever had before. They're in everything because every single restaurant that you go to is using these seed oils, unless they are, now you are starting to see some like more new agey restaurants going back to, the beef tallow and lard for certain things. But like the seed oils are cheap and they have a high smoke point. So they are in pretty much every restaurant in America. Any packaged goods that you're getting in your grocery store is going to have some of these, odds are going to have, these seed oils in them in some way, shape, or form. And they are just jacking up the calorie content of our food. When we look at, and this information is coming from a great conversation between Dr. Rhonda Patrick and Lane Norton that I believe they were having on Dr. Rhonda Patrick's podcast, Found My Fitness. It's pretty high level stuff. Dr. Rhonda Patrick does not mess around. So if you are not interested in science jargon, it's not the podcast for you. That's probably why you listen to us. But they were talking about how the average American is consuming 3,500 calories or more per day and doesn't move more than 20 minutes a day. If you are one of those Americans, or I mean just people in general, where you are eating 3,500 calories a day or more and moving less than 20 minutes a day, your biggest issue is not the seed oils directly, but it's all the foods that you're eating that include them.
Yeah.
And so again, like if you are looking to make a profound change to your diet and to your health and wellness, and we talked about fat loss last week, one of the best things that you can do is to lower your body fat, is to decrease some of those calories. And a lot of times these oils are just jacking up the calories. And so, that I think is a real, and an aspect of the conversation that is actually applicable when it comes to
Yeah.
regular people. If you can think about it, not so much as this seed oil that I'm eating is going to have, all of these downstream like negative impacts. It's going to cause inflammation, this and that, da 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 da. If you just look at it as your calories and, it's fitting into the allotted calories that you can have in a day, go for it. Go for it. And then once you've got your calories in control and you've got your movement in control, then you can start to fine tune. But I mean, we don't need to give, to give an oil change to a car that's not even running yet.
Yeah.
Like you got to get
Right.
it up and running first.
Yeah, that's it. It's so incredibly important. These people will go out to eat. It's sad, really. You'll go out to eat and you'll try to make a healthy decision by having a salad, and then
Right.
you'll
Yeah.
look at the nutrition facts and it's 1,100 calories because it's just doused in oil, and
Hmm.
it's typically seed oil because it's cheap, as you noted.
Right.
Another thing to note is it it's a proxy for overall poor diet quality.
Right.
Like
Yeah,
these
exactly.
things are highly prevalent in processed, ultra processed foods. So those that are eating shittier diets are typically consuming more of these seed oils. It's not necessarily the seed oil that's the problem, but rather
No,
the quality of the diet overall.
right. It's the fact that the seed oils are frying chicken tenders and they're being dipped in ranch dressing with French fries on the side. I mean,
Yeah.
like that's it.
Yeah. So the last thing I'll note is there are some limited studies that show heated oils can lead to this increase in inflammatory markers. Again,
Hmm.
they're not the highest quality studies, but when these oils are heated and then reheated, they do oxidize, potentially introducing these um, oxidants into your body that can cause inflammation. So, you know, you may want to be cautious of seed oil use in high heat cooking, especially if it's heated and reheated, which is very common with fried foods. So, fried foods are going to be really high in those trans fats. Those trans fats we do know are bad. It's definitely a good idea for your health to limit those to the best of your ability, as delicious as they are.
Yeah, and that means French fries. Like it sucks, but
Yeah.
like
But dude,
French fries.
you can put some olive oil on some potatoes these days, and you can throw them in
Oh
an air fryer.
no,
And
but making them at home. But this
yeah,
is. I think that's the point, Dylan. Is if you just like commit to making more food at home, the
it's true.
limiting of the seed oils is so freaking easy because as we're going to talk about in just a couple seconds, all the different alternatives that people have. The problem is where the majority of people are getting this excess amount of seed oils is the eating out. And so
Yeah,
it's just another feather in the cap of eat out less, cook at home more, be more in charge of the food that you're putting in your bodies. And like, you don't even have to stress out about this then.
yeah,
Like, it doesn't even have to become a point of contention or something that you even have to think about on a daily basis because you are setting yourself up for success. You are surrounding yourself with the 80-20 rule. And, it's just like, we just have too many people that are trying to freak people out, that are trying to major in the minors and are sending inconsistent messaging, and it's confusing the shit out of people, and it just gets them fed up, and it sucks.
it does suck, man. A couple additive kind of takeaways here because I think we like to talk about things you can do instead of just things that you
Hmm.
should be avoiding. If you're concerned about the omega 6 to omega 3 ratio, one option you have is to increase your intake of omega 3s, which are found in things that we've talked about being healthy before: fatty fish, flax seeds, chia seeds, walnuts. That'll help improve that balance some if that's a concern of yours. And olive oil, man. Olive oil is so good for you. It's rich in phenols that have these unique benefits for your overall health, your metabolic health. So I like something that Lane Norton said at the end of that conversation with Dr. Rhonda Patrick. He said, have guidelines, not rules. And I think that's kind of where I land on this, right? Like, my guidelines are such that I understand that there could be some risks associated with seed oils. The evidence isn't that strong. There's evidence to suggest that they're not that dangerous. There's alternatives that are healthier. Therefore, I don't use them. I don't keep them in my home, but I don't avoid them. I'm not afraid of them.
Yeah, right, exactly, and I love that, and that is actually something that the guidelines, not rules, is such an important aspect of health and wellness that like if we can just pass that along to our listeners, then then they're gonna have an easier time with this stuff because when you set these hard and fast rules, you are just begging yourself to fail, and then you are going to revert back to what you knew, which was not thinking about what types of oils your food was cooked in. And this isn't meant to be something where you got to go and you know throw out all the oils. Like if you don't have if you currently cook with canola oil at home, that's fine. It's okay to have it, but like go pick up
Yeah.
a bottle of olive oil, go pick up a bottle of avocado oil, and just start mixing them in. One thing I will say real quick, this is something that it's almost gotten me a couple times, and I know it's gotten some listeners to the show because I've had people talk to me about this before. But when you are buying olive oil, make sure it is 100% olive oil, because in the olive oil aisle, it'll even say something to the effect of pure olive oil, and it will be a blend where it is 30% olive oil, and then it's mixed with a bunch of other vegetable oils. If you want to start getting into these healthier, quote unquote healthier oils, like olive oil, just take a minute, read the label. I go for something cold pressed, because that seems to be just like one of those good indicators of a slightly higher quality olive oil. Though it's another one of those rabbit holes that you can go down, because if you talk to people that are really obsessed about these healthy oils, they'll tell you something to the effect of 1 to 2% of the olive oil, or olives that are grown are only 1 to 2% are actually of the highest quality to be made into oil. So it gets challenging even with that. So instead of stressing out all about it, just get a 100% olive oil, keep it in your house, and slowly start to integrate that into your cooking and baking and places that you might be using vegetable oils currently.
Yeah, be a guidelines person in this world of health and wellness, not a rules person. If you're a rules person, you're going to go looking for rules. And when you go looking for rules, you're going to find dogma and people dying on hills. And it's not how any of this works. You're going to end up in one of these camps. We've been there before, where you're just going to be mad, confused, and convinced of something that's not going to help your health. It's just going to make it worse. So, important topic. I think we tackled it well. I felt good about that.
Yeah, I think that was about as useful as it could be, from a couple of guys who aren't scientists. I mean,
Dude, I have a master's in science.
That's true. That's true. With half of us being a scientist. All right, let's bring it on home. The Q&A this week comes from a client slash listener of the show, a personal training client of mine, and she said, for the female listeners who might be interested and confused by this, is it possible to keep getting stronger without bulking? Do you want to start?
Yeah, I can go first. This would be applicable to men or women. I don't think it's gender specific with regards to how I'm going to answer this. I will note there's a difference between getting stronger and building muscle. Mm-hmm. So the first thing I'll note is, yes, you can continue to get stronger. If by stronger you mean move more weight, do more repetitions than you had before. Some of that is a function of learning the movement better, getting into some better technique. The strength is a skill as much as it is dependent upon muscle. And so therefore you could see some progress as it relates to strength in an energy deficit, in on a cut, for example. To build muscle, you can probably build some muscle early on in your lifting career around maintenance, but to really build adequate muscle, you do require an energy surplus so that your body has what it needs to build that muscle. So do you need to go on a prescriptive bulk to achieve that? I think absolutely not. But is that if you're really focused on building that muscle, is that the time to really be limiting your calories? I would say no as well. So it depends. You could probably try to be a bit intuitive with it, pay attention to how your body's responding. If you really wanted to get serious about it, you could consider dialing in those macros and your calorie considerations. I'm not a person who loves to do that, but certain people are suited for it. And that's really the most effective way to understand how your energy balance is impacting your ability to build muscle. But it's fairly individual. It's fairly complex. I would say if you're focused on building muscle, you definitely don't want to be in a cut. Focus on protein, and see how your body's feeling, and be responsive to that with regards to your diet as it changes.
Yeah, I think that's the right answer. I mean, from her perspective, I think that, she mentions it from the, as far as, women are concerned, because a lot of times that's like a woman's big fear when they
That's fair.
get
Yeah.
into the gym, when they weightlift, is, they don't want to get bulky, and building muscle versus tone. And that, that's even a question that, we've talked about a bit on the podcast before, but like, toning and building muscle are essentially the same, concept. There is no there's no truly toning. But I hate the trainers and fitness influencers that just like throw that word, it's a made up word, marketed towards women. Like, what they mean, buddy. What they mean when they say toned. It means that they want to build sleek muscle. They want to look good, without having that, like bodybuilder, like strongman type physique. I get it. The best thing to remember for women in the gym when it comes to this is, like, you've got to try so freaking hard to build like so much muscle that people are scared of you. It doesn't just happen overnight. It's not just one thing that you're going to, you're going to do a set of shoulder presses, and then you won't be able to, walk through the doorway on your way out of the gym. So it's one of those things when we think about, bulking when it comes to women. It's one of those things that it's really it's not as easy as, you might think it is. So I don't think it's something that most people generally have to worry about. If you are, of a like a higher training age, and, really spent a lot of time in the gym, and are now like genuinely trying to build strength without, putting on any more weight, I think you just follow your protocols, like you just said.
Yeah.
Um,
I think bulk is just a word, like, and it's the wrong
right.
word. Like, I think people associate bulk a lot of times with what they see on the internet, which is pretty typically a dirty bulk, where a guy who's really trying to get as strong as possible will put on a whole bunch of weight in addition to the muscle, and then go through a very regimented cut to lose the weight while trying to maintain the muscle to reveal the muscle.
Right.
If you're just looking to tone up, to get stronger, eat a little bit more for a little while and strength train hard,
Yeah.
and
And
sort of
see
see what
where,
starts to
yeah.
happen, and then go back to maintenance, then eat like you did before. And it's a normal person's version of what that bodybuilder's doing, but it does work, and you do require an energy surplus to really maximally build that muscle. So give a season to it. Pay attention to how your body responds. If you start to get a bit uncomfortable with what's occurring, you can dial things back, you can manipulate a bit, but don't think of it as a bulk. Think of it as, I'm going to eat to build muscle, and give a season to that. I think that many women would benefit greatly from doing that, and would not realize the fears that they're going into it with in the end. In fact, would really be quite surprised and very happy with the results.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's get out of here with my favorite podcast segment ever invented. It is the I Lift a Sad Song of the Week. Dylan, it is your song this week. What you got for us?
I heard this one on my release radar on Spotify,
Oh,
and it is not a song you would ever think would be good to lift to, but this cover of it has this beat in it that is just makes it fantastic for the I Lift to Sad Song of the Week playlist. It is the old Bob Dylan tune, Boots of Spanish Leather, as
oh,
covered by Half Moon Run.
it's not Timothy Chalamet.
No, it's not from the movie. This is
Got
Half
it.
Moon Run. I've never heard of Half Moon Run.
Me neither.
It's their cover of Boots of Spanish Leather. It is an awesome rendition, and it's definitely more. It's got a beat. You're gonna like it.
I see it. I got it right here. All right, everybody. I'm going to give this a listen to. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening.